Vacation Bible School begins, so today I want to challenge us in the Word as we get ready for Vacation Bible School and Believers Week. Hebrews chapter 12. Hebrews chapter 12. And I just want to lift up verse 1 and 2. When you have it, signify by saying amen. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely. And let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. I want to talk about this morning, with the Lord's help and your prayers, running to win. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, we are running to win. Beloved, can I let you in on a secret? We are all winners. I believe I'll say that again. We are all winners. Those of us who have confessed hope and placed our trust in Jesus Christ, and we prove that love and trust for Jesus Christ with consistency of faith, the fact remains that we are all winners. I know we live in a society where other people use a different kind of rubric and system to determine the winners and losers. But I'm here to serve notice. It doesn't matter what school you've been to. It doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank. It does not matter. Neither does it matter what side of town you live on. The externalities of life do not determine if you are a winner, but your relationship with Jesus Christ is the thing that deems you as a winner. We are winners. And after all, can we be honest this morning? Everyone wants to win at some level or another in life. All of us endeavor to be winners. The professional athlete eventually desires to win a national championship. The author who labors and writes morning in and evening down, eventually they would hope that their work or their book would one day become the book of the year. Those of you who have a green thumb and you live in a community where people are judging the yards, hopefully one year you would expect to win the yard of the year. Even every child hopes to win the affirmation and the love of their father, and every man wants to be affirmed as a provider in his household. We all desire to win on some level in our lives, but this is the nuance, church. Oftentimes we endeavor to excel in so many areas, but oftentimes we fail to endeavor to excel in our faith with God. I believe I said it again. You run the race of raising a family. You run the race of trying to climb the corporate ladder of success. You run the race of trying to go higher in your social or civic positions or organizations. But oftentimes we leave our faith undone, expecting that we're going to grow stronger in the faith by osmosis. Beloved, that's not so. Faith, our faith in God, is our love, our trust, and our ongoing relationship, and it must be cultivated. And here the writer of Hebrews calls us on the carpet. And he tells us around verse 1b, he says, now I want you to run with endurance. Run with endures. This lets us know that our walk with God requires a level of action and intentionality. Let the church say action. Action. He says, run, be an athlete. Don't be a bum. Don't be laissez-faire. He says, run with endurance. Let me tell you, your walk with God is not going to just mysteriously happen. You don't grow in God by osmosis, but he says, I want you to train like an athlete. Train morning in and also in the evening like a basketball player. Run relays like a track star. Work on your serve like a tennis player. He says, I want you to run with endurance. Can I tell you something, child of God? If you want to become all that you should become in God, you have to have some determination, even when no one else around you has determination. Listen, somebody here this morning, there were so many things pulling at you not to get out of bed this morning. It's Father's Day. Maybe you haven't done all the shopping and prepared the meal or made your reservations. But this is the word. You had to have determination to get up this morning and make your way to the household of faith. And your determination is not based on somebody else, but your determination is based on what God has done for you, because only you know what God has done for you. Touch your neighbor and say, neighbor, the reason why I'm determined, because only I know what God has done for me. And I wonder, is there anybody here at the 8 o'clock service that you have a sense of determination because you have experienced the personal blessings of God? So here, the book of Hebrews is a word, it's a letter of encouragement to all Christians. We don't know who the writer of Hebrews is, but he gives us encouragement for the faith journey. And listen, the book of Hebrews, it starts off like an essay, it proceeds like a sermon, and it ends like a letter. The book of Hebrews simply focuses us on the preeminence of Christ and where Christ should be in our lives. This is the take-home truth, church. God provides us supporters, imperatives, and Jesus Christ as the ultimate example for us to win the race of faith. I said again, God provides you and I supporters, imperatives, and Jesus Christ as the ultimate example for us to win the race of faith. This is the deed to do. Embrace spiritual support, serious evaluation, and spiritual disciplines, which sets the stage for spiritual successes. So the first thing we learn in this text, if we're going to run to win, this is the first thing we have to know is we are surrounded with supporter. Look, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. Listen, the writer opens up saying that on this journey, one of the tactics of the enemy is to make you think that you're all by yourself. I believe I'll say that again. That's a tactic of the enemy, because running a race is not easy business. It's not easy physically, neither is it easy on a spiritual realm. He says you are surrounded with such a great cloud of witnesses. He says you're surrounded. He says there's a great cloud of witnesses. Literally, when you read this, a closer reading is everywhere you turn, there's someone who knows where you are, and they're supporting you. And this great cloud of witnesses is Hebrews chapter 11, where we have the hall of faith. You have all of these people who operated in faith. It says, and Abel offered a more excellent sacrifice than Cain. Literally, Abel by faith gave God his best. Now, oftentimes we don't think that's faith. But somebody can testify giving God your best takes faith, because you're always tempted to take a shortcut. You're always tempted to duck and dodge your devotional life. You're always tempted to look for God for always to do something for you, but you're never looking for a way to do something for God in return. Then he says, by faith, Noah built the biggest cruise liner that we've ever seen. Now, Noah had to have faith. He's building an ark because God said it's going to rain, but there's no cloud in the sky. Now, you know, Noah had to have faith because Noah liked to have communion more than on the first Sunday. So he has to build this ark with hammer and nails. And you know he's inebriated and he without injuring himself. Noah is operating by faith. Then you have Abraham. He moves by faith. God shows him a place and he starts moving even when he doesn't even know where he's going. Moses operates in faith because he says, I have to lead the people out of Egypt, even though they still have some Egypt inside of them. And this is the word. All of these people lived, operated, and endured, and eventually was victorious in faith. And can I tell you something? Many of us, we know we're going to have difficulty, but this is the nuance. You have issue when you're going to have difficulty even while you're dedicated. I believe I said that again. That's tension. We all know we're going to have difficulty, but these individuals, they were dedicated to God. They had difficulty, but they still persevered. Now notice, they all operate in faith, but none of them are perfect. Oh, that's a word for us today. For you to have support, you don't have to always receive support from the sanitized. God gives us support from all different type of people. Look, Noah wasn't perfect. Noah would get so drunk that he would expose himself. Moses was a murderer. Abel always had a fight going on with his brothers. Rahab was a prostitute, but we learn from their lives. And this is the problem with church folk. We want people to have more perfection than what we're willing to live up to ourselves. They operated, they moved, they operated in faith. They weren't perfect, but God was using them. And that's a word for somebody that maybe you've been struggling. Can you be used by God? But God says you don't have to be perfect for me to be perfecting my work inside of you. When I have the opportunity to fly, I typically like a window seat. While I have the window seat, I have a tendency to look out the window and to admire the beauty of the clouds. No matter how beautiful the clouds are, I've never witnessed a cloud that didn't have jagged edges. But what I realize about the cloud, though it has jagged edges and inconsistencies, its jagged edges doesn't make it unusable. Lean in, child of God. That's a good word. Don't buy into the trick of the enemy that you're by yourself or someone can't give you a word of encouragement, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And oftentimes we are strengthened by the unsanitized stories of our brothers and sisters. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, I know you're dressed up today. I know you look like you're perfect on the outside, but if you tell me the truth, maybe you can help me. Maybe if you tell me you are on the verge of divorce, but you hung in there, maybe I hang in there too. Maybe if you tell me there's life after divorce, I can live and face tomorrow. Maybe if you tell me you had problems raising your children, I can hang in there with my children. I need some support. But secondly, I'm running out of time today. We have to be willing to sever the non-essential and the unspiritual. Look at what the text says this morning. Let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely to us. Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Listen, the anonymous writer offers a word of caution. He says, let us. That's a word for us. It's inclusive. Just because your sin or your problem or your it is not visible, all of us have something. I believe I'll say that again. All of us have something, so that leans to the fact that none of us have the right to stand in judgment of another. The writer, he says, let us lay aside every weight and sin that so easily beset. Let us, he makes this delineation, this difference between weight and sin. Weight is anything that keeps you from doing your best. This has to do with outward influences. Weight doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong. But if it keeps you from being all that you should be in Christ, you should be willing to let it go. He says, let us lay aside every sin and weight. And listen, this is the word. Oftentimes we have some good stuff in our life, but it makes us miss God. Oh, I'll say that again. It is good, but if it makes you miss God, you have to be willing to lay it aside. And you have to be willing to lay aside anything that keeps you from running your race with God. Listen, this is the word. Many of us cannot get in full stride with God because we're holding on to the unnecessary. You like it, it feels good, it smells good, it ain't nothing bad, but it is unnecessary. And you know when it's unnecessary, when it keeps you from giving God your best. Some of us can't manage the good because we'll fall in love with the good and we'll miss out on what's best. Not long ago, the madam and I, we were taking Jen and Trey to the baseball field. They're playing baseball now, and we had to go outside. Pray for me, church. And Trey, it's 90 degrees outside, and Trey wants to wear this jacket. And I said, Trey, put the jacket back in the truck. He was upset, but I had to tell him, though the jacket was not necessarily bad, it wasn't necessary. And him wearing the jacket would impede his progress. If he would hit the ball, it would keep him from moving faster to get to first base. Listen, child of God, many of us, we have stuff that we like, but God is saying take it off because it's unnecessary. Consider, I want to talk through this morning. Consider some of the weights in your life. Maybe it's the thoughts. Maybe it's your thoughts. You're always thinking thoughts of self-defeat. Or maybe for some of us, on the contrary, we always have these thoughts of self-aggrandizement. Some of us, we think too low of ourselves. But then some of us, we just simply think too highly of ourselves. For some of us, it's our relationships. You hang out with people all the time. They're not bad. They're not committing a crime, but they don't push you to be your best in God, neither do they push you to be your best person. And listen, child of God, you have to discern the relationships that you maintain, because oftentimes they will keep you from meeting your full potential spiritually. Maybe it's your recreational life. Your recreational life. Everyone needs some recreation, recreation. But listen, maybe you spend all of your time looking for the next good time. And you're willing to do anything to have a shortcut. You'll cut corners just so you can get to the next good time. For some of us, it's our routines. We are so busy doing good that we fail to realize that we miss God. Can I tell you something this morning? It's possible to do good and not be doing the God thing. That's the problem in our modern society. We think that if it's good, that's a substitution for God. But let me tell you, you can be good in the marketplace and still get an F with God. Your philanthropic endeavors should never take the place of your commitment to God in this local church. Yes, I said it. You don't have to agree with it, but it's Bible. Then maybe for some of us, it's our talent. God has given us a talent, but sometimes you're so enthralled with your talent that God gave you that you don't make no time for God. That's weight. But then the text takes a shift. He moves us from outward focus to inward self-evaluation. He says, now let us lay aside every sin that so easily besets us. This goes back to the athletes in this time. They wore long robes and they could not run to their greatest ability with long robes. So they had two options. They had to tuck it in or take it off. Now, this is the word for us. When it comes down to sin, the fact of the matter is we can't manage sin in our own strength. All of us have a sin problem. We all have the tendency to miss the mark that God has placed. We all have the tendency to step over the line of God's righteousness. He says, literally, he says, lay aside, take it off, get rid of it. And this is the word. I said this on Ash Wednesday. God gives us pruning shears to cut some stuff off in our lives so God won't have to do surgery. I wish y'all were hearing me. I'm preaching better than y'all saying amen. God says, here, go a set of scissors so you can get rid of it, because if you let it go too far, I'm going to have to cut you open. And this is the thing, you can't always dictate where God is going to do surgery. I'd rather God do surgery in private, but there's sometimes God will do surgery in front of everybody. Sin. We have to come face to face with sin, because oftentimes when we come face to face with sin, I want to push this today. Sin, when I look at my sin, it gives me an awareness of who I am, not what I hope people to see. And don't look at me like that, you too. Sin. When we look at our sin, we are forced to deal with who we really are, just not with what people see. And oftentimes we are worried about image because we're human. But God is concerned with our identity. And there's a nuance. Image is what people see, but identity is who we are. If you will not have death unto sin, you will have death. Sin, unchecked, will always cause great pain. But finally, I'm done today. We have to have singularity of focus. Look at the text. It says, let us lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely to us. Let us run with endurance. Look at the text. Looking unto Jesus, who is the founder and perfecter of our faith, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Listen, he tells us we have to have concentration. Let me tell you, good runners don't focus on everything around them. Here, the anonymous writer says, looking unto Jesus. When you read this in the original language, it literally means looking away to look to. He says you have to look away from some stuff to keep your focus singularly on Jesus, and that person that we look away to look to, we look to Jesus. Jesus is our concentration. And listen, he says Jesus is the source of our faith, who is the author and the perfecter of our faith. Listen, if you have faith in anything else, you don't have faith at all. The preeminence is Christ. Christ has to be the center and the circumference of our existence. Jesus is the source of our faith. But not only is he the source of our faith, but he demonstrates great faith. It says, for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross. Jesus, for the joy. Consider all that Jesus endured. He says, I'm willing to go through momentary pain so I can give them lifelong love. Oh, you missed your shout. He says, I'm willing to go through lifelong pain. I'm willing to be betrayed by my friend. I'm willing to be abused. I'm willing to be wrongfully convicted. I'm willing for them to spit on me. I know it don't look good now, but on the other side, there's joy. I can't illustrate it any better. It's like a woman who's giving birth. She bears down and she goes through Braxton's Hicks and she goes through contractions. She cries, she screams, and she hollers in labor. But she knows on the other side of pain, there's joy when the doctor gives her that baby. And Jesus endured the pain, because he says, I'm trying to give them joy on the other side. I'm done today. I'm done. But finally, he's victorious in the faith. He says, and now he's sitting down at the throne of God. He's sitting down. He says, I've done all that I'm supposed to do. Now I can sit down. Somebody saying, what type of encouragement is that? He's sitting down. When you look all through the Bible, Jesus is standing up. He's standing up when he heals. He stands up when he's teaching. He's standing up when he dies on the cross. But he says, I've accomplished all that I'm supposed to do. He's even standing up when they're stoning Deacon Stephen. But after he's finished his work on Calvary, he died and he rose. Now he sits down, making intercession for us. And what's the encouragement? The encouragement is that if you keep on running with God, one day you'll be able to. Have I got help in the room? But somebody said, Reverend, how can I endure? How can I make it through all this? I don't even know the course. Let me tell you this story. I'm done. There's a story about the Special Olympics, the 400-meter race. Special Olympics, everyone is impaired. Leg, arm, something's wrong. And there was one gentleman who was in the Special Olympics. He did not have an obvious physical impairment. But as the camera closed in on him, they realized he had a visual impairment. The commentator came on over the television and says, we don't know how he's going to make this race. And another commentator says he can win this race if he has hooked up with someone who knows the course. God bless you, beloved. You may not know the course, but you ought to hook up with somebody who knows the course. And I know somebody who knows the course. I know somebody who's ran this race. I know somebody who's endured the pain. Do you want to know who he is? His name is Jesus. Mary's baby, Jesus. Joseph's stepson, Jesus. Elizabeth's cousin, Jesus. The fourth man in the fiery furnace, Jesus. Rahab's crimson cord, Jesus. My bridge over troubled waters, Jesus. My way out of no way. Shake your neighbor's hand and say, neighbor, keep on running, because I got somebody who will run with you. Walk with me while I'm on this Christian journey. I need Jesus. Yeah! The doors is open. Shake somebody's hand, tell them you ought to run the wind. You ought to run the wind. Today, if you're here unsaved, unchurched, you can't run this race if you don't have someone who knows the course. And somebody can testify Jesus knows. He knows all about our struggles.